Strategy, Chris Randone, Manny Laura, presented by Yahoo Daily Fantasy Sports. Just want to go ahead and first thank everyone who will be joining us. We appreciate you guys on this early Friday morning. Well, early Friday for me. Manny, how you doing, man?
Almost noon for me. So I feel
Yeah.
great, man. I have my coffee next to me, have some lineups going in the background. So another week, man. All we can do is forget the past, right? We forget what's been bad in the past, remember the good parts, and hopefully we can create another pretty good, memorable week. What is this, 11? Yeah, I like this.
Yeah, man. Week 11. And, you said forget something. There's something I still can't forget because I feel like we got to get the elephant out of the room. But I just so curious to see what your thoughts are about what happened last night with Myles Garrett and Mason
Dude,
Rudolph.
that is, I've never seen that in a game before. That is, and okay, so I've seen from two extremes. I've seen from, well, Mason Rudolph started it on the floor. I'm like, you're ridiculous. Like, I don't know how you could even side on that side with what Myles Garrett did after that. I've seen obviously suspended. I've seen suspended the whole season, the rest of the season. I've seen suspended indefinitely from the NFL, like ban him, and then I've seen jail time from notable guys on Twitter, and it's just like, man, everyone's all over the place with this. I don't know. My personal take, it's there's not a spot on the there's not a place on the field for that. Obviously, that's embarrassing. That's you could have, and I don't know if you could actually have killed him, but all these guys saying you could have killed him if you hit him on the perfect spot on the head. Maybe, dude. I don't know about kill, but left him seriously injured, like in critical condition, probably, dude. And that's serious, man. Anytime you can eliminate that from the game, you have to. Obviously he's getting suspended. How much left to be seen, but for me it's the season. There's not much left in the season, so if you think this is like a 5-game suspension for him, 6-game suspension, whatever it is, then sure. But I think it should be maybe half a season, 8 games. Start off the season next year with him suspended a little bit, and I don't know, man, but there's no place for that. That was awful.
I thought it was crazy also because Rudolph, if you remember a few games ago, got like knocked out
Yeah,
cold on a hit. And I mean, he just suffered, he suffered a pretty bad concussion. So to get hit in the head again, I mean, that's a vulnerable spot for him. And so there's really no words to justify like what took place. And yeah, you can look at it from both sides and,
yeah,
but they're grown men and there's a lot of trash talking on that field. So
yeah.
regardless of what happens, I mean, Myles Garrett is a monster compared to a weak quarterback in not Baker, but Mason Rudolph. So
Yep.
I don't know, man. The thing I want to ask you, could he press charges? Because I saw that people were saying that they could press
Yeah,
charges. Is that for real?
that's what I'm saying. I don't know. And then reports of the police being in the locker room after the game or whatever. Like, I honestly don't know what you can and cannot do. Right? It's such a touchy subject. I've never seen anything like this before. But hitting, dude. Listen, you hit anyone when you're Myles Garrett with any prop, any item, anything on the head, on the top of the head of any player, dude. That you're looking at, dude. You're looking at serious injuries, man. Like you could give him my headphones right here and tell Myles Garrett to swing it at someone's head, and you could do some serious damage. Imagine a helmet, dude. So I don't know, man. It's it was disgusting. I hated seeing that. Obviously, everyone was entertained, but that's definitely not the purpose of yesterday's game.
Well, one place we won't find Myles Garrett is Yahoo Daily Fantasy Sports this weekend because they have the NFL 200K baller, 20K to first. And our sponsor, Yahoo Daily Fantasy Sports, for those of you who haven't signed up yet, you can go ahead and use the promo code AWESEMO, AWESEMO, and you get $30 in Yahoo Sports Rewards points. So the Yahoo Baller or NFL 200K baller is $10 entry. So, those reward points get you 3 entries into that tournament. So if this is something that you haven't signed up for yet, take advantage of it and use the promo code AWESEMO. And once again, that's AWESEMO. Week 11, Manny. Let's get into this. I'm kind of interested on this week because it's 11 games. It's a little bit bigger than what we've played over the last few weeks. But there are a few games that have some scoring shootout potential. And this first game, I'm curious on one side of the ball because I feel very confident on the other. But let's go into this first game. We have Dallas and Detroit. Currently, right now, Detroit's a 6-point underdog. And Dak Prescott, man, he looked great against Minnesota, even though they got the L. But he's played very exceptionally well the last 2 weeks, 2 straight games with 3 passing touchdowns. And I pulled up a crazy stat with him, but he's thrown 5 of the NFL's most 10 improbable completions this year so far. And if for those of you who don't know what that is, but it's really unlikely that a completion would take place. And it's a crazy stat to me because he is making big plays, and it's just really kind of solidified this offense. Usually, when we think of the Cowboys, we think of just Ezekiel Elliott, but Dak Prescott is playing in true form. Where are you going here, Manny, in this Dallas Cowboys Detroit Lions game?
Yeah, so it's funny because the last 2 weeks it hasn't really been much of Zeke at all, right? And it's not like he hasn't had the volume. He's had 20 plus carries in the last 4 games he's played, 2 really good games, 2 really bad games, right? So what are you going to see? And there seems to be an obvious correlation here, right? Where when you do play Zeke and he does go off, those 2 games, Dak had 18 fantasy points and 21 fantasy points. He doesn't go off, and then Dak has 22, 23, and then 29.8, so 30. It's when Zeke isn't doing much, Dak is going off, and then when Zeke is, Dak really isn't doing much at all. And then the receivers, maybe there's one receiver that does okay, but for the most part, it's just Zeke. So for me, it's you have to pick one or the other, right? And if you're of the belief that I don't know, the Lions can somehow stop and are a decent defense and stop just this offense completely to where you don't want either Zeke nor Dak, then damn, I think that's pretty bold. For me, it's I think I want the passing game again, man. It's just for me, it's Amari Cooper. By the way, is he practiced on a limited fashion, I believe. So I think he will play, but he's been so good this season. It's insane. Like I saw a highlight montage of his route running this year. Man, unbelievable. Such a good player. And when they just when they feed him, I mean, you're seeing 200-yard games out of him, right? He had one, I believe, in week 5 against Green Bay. He posts his, 100-yard games, it feels like daily or pretty close. I'd take that, but even then, it's still a game where outside of Dak, maybe Amari, I don't have much of this game whatsoever. Do you like any other receivers on the other side coming back? I'm not really high on them at all, and I don't know, outside of Dak and Amari, I don't see much here.
The Lions, they rank bottom 7 in defense, DVOA, 23rd in pass defense. So I'm in agreement with you. I love the Cowboys passing game here. The Lions don't blitz. I think they're one of the lowest blitzing teams in the league, if not the lowest. And I mean, they're not going to get pressure on Dak. And the more time he has in the pocket, the more time that these receivers have the ability to run routes, he's going to find them, and he's going to get them the ball. So I'm not worried about Amari Cooper being questionable. He was like that last week. Absolutely went off. This game, I'm really curious to see what you have to say about Zeke, because the Cowboys have the 4th best run blocking team in the NFL. The last 2 weeks, he's nowhere to been found. And the Lions kind of stepped up last week, where I'm sure everyone in here and the entire DFS community was disappointed in Montgomery, who we thought was in a great spot, great price against a very vulnerable rush defense, who the week prior we saw Josh Jacobs run all over this team. And this team has been hurt by injuries. And so when it comes to Zeke, I know you're confident in the passing game, and I think that's where you go first. But how about Ezekiel Elliott here in this running game?
Yeah, no, you can definitely go there too. I'd say if you go Zeke, make sure you have nothing of Dak and Amari, at least per lineup, right? Depending on how many you're running. I think it's a fine spot for both sides, right? But both the running game and the passing game, and it's just correlation stuff. Now, when you're trying to make a lineup and you see how much everyone costs, well, then it's a little bit different, right? Zeke at $9K on DraftKings, he's priced up everywhere for the matchup. But you look at Amari Cooper and Dak, and it's all right. Well, it's kind of the same thing, right? 7-7 on DraftKings for Amari Cooper. I mean, in Yahoo, really similar. In FanDuel, really similar. And it's all right. Well, now you're paying premiums for these guys, and you obviously can't do both. It's hard to do both. You can, but it's hard. I don't like how the lineups come out. I think I rather the passing game, but I have no issues with Zeke if that's where you want to go.
So Zeke on DraftKings currently right now, he's projected sub 6%. He's at 5.9%. He's at $9K. So If you're kind of up in the air, let's say you want to go up to McCaffrey, who is in a really good spot this week. He's at 10.5K. He's at 31.3%. Could you make any justification in wanting to pivot down to Zeke with that little ownership, but also that much upside considering the spot that he's in? Because if this passing game, if they're a team that doesn't blitz and they're not stacking the box and they're going to be focused on Dak and his arm and spending a lot of time on these wide receivers, I think this opens up the running game for Zeke. And I think with how good they are, the offensive line, I could really see Zeke just eating all day long on Sunday. So could you justify pivoting to Zeke from McCaffrey, or do you have McCaffrey higher than Zeke?
So raw projection, obviously McCaffrey's higher, but I think that also comes with ownership, and that's insane considering he's 10-5 now. He just keeps going higher and higher. If you wanted to go down, I like either Zeke or Dalvin Cook, and we'll get to Dalvin in a little bit, but I like them both, man. And if you wanted to go to Zeke over Dalvin, I have no issues with that. I think because of what Dalvin's done this season, I think projections for him are a little bit better. You could argue that Zeke just has a better matchup. And when that's the case, we've heard it time and time again. And you look at ownership too. It's, would you rather take Zeke projected at 20, 21 or Dalvin projected at 22, 23 when the difference in ownership is like 25%, right? And they both cost the same thing. One's 8.9, the other one's 9K. For me, that'll probably be Zeke every single time. But it's obviously people's preference. Yeah, I don't mind Zeke at all. I'm actually leaning towards this price point rather than paying up for McCaffrey. So yes.
A little different narrative on ownership for FanDuel for Zeke. He's at 20.9%, 8,400. So not much to be found on DraftKings. However, FanDuel is getting some ownership, but he is the seventh highest owned running back. That's crazy. At 20%, he's the seventh highest owned running back. Wow.
Insane.
Yeah, that's nuts. Lions side, we saw Jeff Driscoll come in to fill in for Stafford. He threw for 269 yards and a touchdown against a somewhat decent Bears team, but he did take 46 attempts to get there. I don't think he is fantasy valuable. However, they don't have a running game, so I feel like he's just going to have to pass. I'm not too keen on this Lions running game at all. But if you're thinking the Cowboys are really just going to run it here and just really bring an offensive route, can you roster any kickback with a wide receiver? Do you see anything you like here on the Lions side?
Really tough because last week when it happened, and it happened kind of late in the week, it was, well, now I have to bump Kenny Golladay down. I have to bump Marvin Jones down. They obviously have no running game, so I don't even look back there. And it's maybe he isn't horrible, but then you look at the game and it's like, well, again, typical Golladay fashion. It feels like a ton of targets, but a ton of uncatchable targets. And it was also a tough matchup. So I really don't even know what to say about Jeff Driscoll in the passing game. I want to say that, yeah, it's still a bump down for most of these guys to the point where Golladay at that price tag becomes really, really tough to play. So does Marvin Jones. And I have no interest in Jeff Driscoll if you're just basing everything off last week. But again, it was Chicago, man. I mean, that's still a really good defense. And I don't know. I'd like to say that these guys are extremely under-owned. When they do have upside, you're talking about 1%, 2%, 3% owned guys. But 1%, 2%, 3% owned Kenny Golladay sounds pretty darn good, right? I just wish they had a little bit better quarterback back there. Fact of the matter is, Driscoll passed 46 times. If that's going to continue, I mean, you love that number. Even though he completed half of those, I think you'd love that number. So I think there's some sneaky upside here, but if you're just doing median projections, it's really, really tough to play this team.
Yeah, I don't see how you can go here for fantasy purposes because I just don't see the upside. I mean, if you're thinking maybe they're just going to be passing heavy and you want to go ahead and roll in Golladay or Marvin Jones, I guess. But I think there's other areas that we can go.
Sure.
Jacksonville at Indianapolis, next game up. Colts 3-point favorites at home. Minshew Mania. It's officially over for the time being. Nick Foles going to get back into action. Dede Westbrook should be back as well. Jacksonville coming off just a horrible game in London 2 weeks ago against the Texans. Had a bye week to prepare for this. Colts came off a horrible horrible game as well. I'm not sure if you saw your Miami Dolphins, but they made the Miami Dolphins look somewhat pretty decent last week. Pretty shocked about that. But the Colts defense still ranks ninth against the pass. They're allowing only 223 yards per game. They do have 23 sacks as well. And they limit big plays. I think they're seventh right now in the league when it comes to 40-plus yard plays. They've only allowed 4 all season. So a game that I don't know if I like this for fantasy purposes. Leonard Fournette, obviously the volume king, will be in this game. Jacoby Brissett might be behind center here, so we could maybe consider Zach Pascal. But where do you see yourself going in this matchup?
Yeah, it's pretty much just one guy, probably a top 3 option at running back this week. That has to be Fournette, right? I mean, you mentioned the volume; it's there. I wish they were, and I wish they were favorites, but they're on the road and they're dogs. To be honest, and I think that's credit to I don't know, just Indy being at home, but it's not a good team from what we saw last week. You look at their defense and you see their rushing defense. I mean, this should be a spot where Fournette eats, and look, it's Foles coming back. How healthy he is, I don't know. Will the offense get a bump? Maybe. I think at times Minshew looked good, but the last 4 games for Minshew was horrendous. He was awful. I mean, you can't get worse than what we saw the last 4 games. If they get a little bit better, they get in the red zone more often, you get more looks for Fournette down there, then yeah, you have to love Fournette. And he's 7-9 compared to the 10-5s and 9Ks of McCaffrey, Zeke, Dalvin. You're getting a guy with 25 plus touches maybe this week against a really bad rushing defense. So I think I'm there with you, man. It's a top 3 spot for me. Other than that, I have no interest in Foles, no interest in the passing game, and then obviously no interest from Mindy either.
Yeah, I'm looking at this game, and I'm not sure if I want to touch anyone. I don't even know if I really want Fournette right now. And it's still 2 days away, but I'm just looking at kind of what I see in other areas. And I guess the question would be is if you're paying up for Dalvin Cook, or if you're paying up for McCaffrey or Zeke, I mean, if you're also going to pay up for Fournette, then, I mean, you're going to be going to wide receiver and not really spending up. And I think that there's wide receivers that we're going to be focused on here in other games that we're going to talk about.
Yep.
But, I think Julio Jones and Michael Thomas are 2 very appealing guys this week and Amari Cooper, who we just spoke on, that all have high price points. So with roster construction, it's really going to be somewhat difficult. But on FanDuel, I do like his price tag at $7,200. And I think his price tag on FanDuel compared to DraftKings allows you to get 2 of those big dogs at running back. So I don't mind that there. For the Colts side of the ball, I don't really have any confidence right now. Even if Brissett is back, I don't know if this is an area that I want to go. I was big on Pascal last week. I thought he was in a great matchup against a very weak Dolphin secondary, and he was nowhere to be found. It was very disappointing. I think he had 7 targets, but he only caught 2 balls for 26 yards. I mean, that Miami Dolphins defense on the road in Indianapolis just really threw me a curveball. I was very shocked. But this week, this game, I just feel they're going to keep it on the ground. I think Marlon Mack and Fournette will just be the guys that just see a lot of carries, and it's just going to be one of those ground and pound, move the chains, run down the clock type of thing. Marlon Mack on FanDuel is $100 more than Fournette. And
my goodness.
So if you're considering to go Marlon Mack, just save the $100 and pay down. It's just, I don't see how Marlon Mack can outproduce Fournette here, especially with the volume. Marlon Mack is only on the field 50% of the time, as we've seen the last couple games, and Hines seems to be kind of getting that split backfield type of approach now. And so that hinders Marlon Mack completely, and Mack's not even involved in the passing game. So I would completely fade Mack in this game without any hesitation.
Yeah, I'm there with you. I like Fournette just way better. I think the carousel you have at tight end now with Ebron in the mix too. Like, Ebron had 12 targets last week. And here's the thing with this team that's so frustrating. It's if it's not Doyle, it's Ebron. If it's not Ebron, it's Doyle. And then once in a while, it's Pascal or whoever they feel like incorporating from the receiving core. It's like they rely on tight ends first, and then continue with the progression. And it's like, it's frustrating because there's really no upside, right? Even with Brissett back, it's just like, okay, well, they don't have guys that you really love in that passing game. It's a really tough team to stack. If you wanted to play them, it could only be Mac, but Mac isn't in the best spot, especially when you factor in price. It's a really tough team to play this week.
Ebron, speaking of tight end, he had 12 targets against the Dolphins, 5 targets in the red zone. My man only scored 8 fantasy points on 12 targets. That's insane.
Yeah.
So I mean, yeah, I'm not really too keen on this. Next game, you spoke about Dalvin Cook. Here we are, home matchup against the Denver Broncos, 10.5-point favorites. Denver, somewhat of a defense you can respect to some degree. However, there have been times this year where teams have ran on them and ran on them effectively. But Dalvin Cook in a great spot. He's one of the highest owned projected players this week on Osmos projections. Currently on FanDuel, he's 39% at 8,600, which is the highest owned. And Dalvin Cook on DraftKings is 27.7%, which is the 5th highest owned. So go ahead, Manny. The floor is yours. Give us this Dalvin Cook breakdown on why you like him so much.
Yeah, it's kind of a price thing mixed with volume, and then what he's done this season, even in tough matchups, right? Like, I don't know, the volume at some point, and I talk about it with Lafayette on Sirius all the time. It's like volume over efficiency all day. He loves that, and if you look at his game log, to me, he is probably the best running back in the league right now, and I'm not even sure it's close. Like, it's almost a guarantee that he has a really good game every single week, to the point where we guarantee McCaffrey has good games every week. And because McCaffrey has been so good fantasy-wise, we all just forget Dalvin Cook. Dalvin Cook's done the same thing. Every single week he's been good except 2 weeks. He's only had 2 bad weeks. He's been phenomenal every single week, and it involves a passing game too, man. He's very good in the passing game, right? 7 catches last time out, 4 or 5. He had a couple bad stretches there, or a couple bad games there, but 6, 4. Like, he gives you PPR upside too. He scores almost every single week. He has 2 weeks only this week, the 2 bad weeks that he hasn't scored, and he scores almost every single week. This is as close as you get to surefire production that's not priced at 10.5. So for me, he's almost matchup proof of how good he's been. And yeah, you price him at 8-9 away from a 10.5 McCaffrey, and I think I'd rather go there than say anywhere else, maybe even Zeke too. But this is the price point again that I want to hover around.
I don't think the Vikings can win this game without just using Cook as much as they can. Denver's pass defense is really good. They've only surrendered 7 passing touchdowns all season, second best in the league. And with only Diggs there, I feel like they're able to go ahead and scheme to, if Thielen's not playing, which I don't think he is that correct? Is he still?
He did not practice. He's quote unquote questionable, but they think he has a chance. To me, I don't think he plays.
Yeah. So if he doesn't, I think you double up on Diggs, and you limit that passing game. And for Cook, this is a game where heavy workload, automatic, right? He gets 20 plus carries every single game, involved heavy in the passing game, 7 targets, 6 targets. You don't have to worry about that. They need him in order to win. I don't see how they can move the ball through the air. Yes, it is a home game, and Kirk Cousins thrives in that situation. So he could, but I think Dalvin Cook by far is the most usable resource on this slate. And I think that justifies why the price point is more than reasonable. And the ownership dictates that.
Yeah, for sure. I'm there with you. I think this is the spot you want to be in, whether it's him or Zeke, but hover around here. I think I'll take these guys over McCaffrey.
Anyone from the Broncos side, I'm not seeing it. I could see recency bias leading people to go to Noah Fant because of what he did, and he had a 75-yard touchdown, and he's cheap. But I don't have any love for the running game. We just saw what the Vikings did to Zeke. So this running back by committee and Royce Freeman and Phillip Lindsay, I'm just not about it. And I don't think really Brandon Allen's going to be able to do much against this Vikings defense, even though it's somewhat vulnerable, as we saw in this passing defense, specifically in the slot coverage as well. But Maybe Cortland Sutton, but outside of that, I'm not seeing much. How about you?
Yeah, no, I have Brandon Allen projected as the worst QB on the slate. Noah Fant, if it wasn't for very, very poor tackling, has another pedestrian game, and we're not talking about him. And I mean, Cortland Sutton's, I think he's a stud, but I mean, he has a really bad quarterback. Not much you can do about that. So, yeah, no, I'm nowhere near this team. This team kind of booty.
Next game, Houston, Baltimore, Ravens -4 currently. 1:00 game. Man, a lot of people are saying this is a shootout. We got Deshaun Watson and Lamar Jackson, two of the most dynamic dual threat quarterbacks in the league. Oh, man, what we saw last week in Lamar Jackson is just absolutely outstanding. The guy is a stud. If you want to just knock him on one thing, he can work on his accuracy. But outside of that, I mean, he's just an absolute beast. This week, he's going up against a vulnerable pass defense to some degree in the Texans. He is someone who is rated pretty high, and ownership's going to be there. Could you see yourself rostering either of these quarterbacks in this matchup?
Yeah, so if you're talking raw projections, they're both my highest. Lamar Jackson being 1, Deshaun Watson being 2, and they're a step ahead of Dak Prescott, Jameis Winston, and those guys. So I do love this team again. Or this game, and I love game stacking. I love team stacking. So here's how it's playing out so far in my lineups. I have Deshaun Watson ahead of Lamar Jackson only because I like what I can pair with him better, right? With Deshaun Watson, you have your easy pairings, guys you don't even have to think about, right? If you know you're playing DeAndre Hopkins, if you want Stills, sure, and you know exactly where they're going with the ball every single time, or at least we think so. For Lamar Jackson, I like. Well, let me rephrase this because Mark Andrews is the guy. I totally get that. Mark Andrews is the guy, and he caught 6 for 53 and 2 touchdowns. But he passes so much to these other tight ends that it has me feeling, like I hate when that happens because it's like every time I see Nick Boyle catches, it's so frustrating because why are you passing this cat? Why do you guys have like 5 tight ends on your team, and why do you use them all? Like it's so annoying. So it's one of those spots where I also don't know how much of Marquis Brown we are going to get on Sunday, right? He did not practice on Thursday. I think the ankle thing is serious. So I don't know if he plays, then sure. But I'd love more clarity on what's going on with him. Outside of that, I mean, you could only pair him with Mark Andrews, and even then, not the best pairing on the board. So I have Deshaun Watson ahead, but if you're looking to run him naked, say Lamar Jackson, perfectly fine. He's ready to rock.
What's your take on the Ravens defense that has gradually improved over the last few weeks? But one area where I want to get your insight is they blitz the most of any team in the NFL, 49.4%. This week, they have a quarterback that can run and use his feet and really dodge, the pass rush. And so does that kind of scare you at all when it comes to a defense that, and they normally don't play so much man, they blitz, but it's more zone coverage. And I want to talk about this real quick because when it comes to this matchup for Watson, do you think this is problematic, or do you think he's someone who can expose that blitz and be able to make plays?
No, it's a valid question because we all know the sack problems, right? And that's a whole different issue for this team. One that they wanted to fix coming into the season, and they've fixed it to an extent, right? He is not the most sacked quarterback in the league, believe it or not. That actually is Jameis Winston, but we'll get there at a different time. Jameis Winston almost has 10 more sacks than does Deshaun Watson. So the improvements they've made to the line this season have actually worked to an extent, right? To where he isn't being sacked as much as we think. And even seeing that they blitz a ton or whatever, it's still a very elusive quarterback. And we've seen him make plays time and time again. I'm trusting Vegas on this one and saying this is a shootout, man. And as much as I'd like to say, Baltimore has a pretty decent passing defense, which they do. They're in the top 10 DVOA, and they have a horrible running defense. I like to think that Houston will still trust Deshaun Watson as much as they can, right? So for me, it's not a spot where I see the running game all of a sudden you know, on one side being Houston, just running a ton, and then on the other side running a ton back with Lamar Jackson. Them like I just can't see that. I actually do think it's a shootout. So for me, it's still a ton of Deshaun Watson, it's still a ton of DeAndre Hopkins, and that's probably my favorite pairing on the entire slate. Yeah.
You mentioned the Russian defense somewhat vulnerable and could be exposed. Man, Carlos Hyde, could we give him any respect here at 4,600 on DK? Because hear me out. He gets there sometimes. And, 19 rushing attempts, 19, 26, 21, 20. I mean, there's volume there. He's not hitting his projection sometimes. However, though, there's volume there. And if he was in the passing game involved a little bit more because Duke Johnson gets that role, I think he would be a no-brainer at 4,600. But since he's not involved in the receiving game, it's hard to justify, could we roster him? But could he be someone maybe of interest here at this price point for this week, given what you just mentioned with the rush defense?
Yeah, he believe it or not, and I don't know why, because I've never been. I don't know how many Carlos Hyde fans there are in this world. But a couple things. He's almost averaging 20 carries a game. Believe it or not, like 19 carries in London, 19 carries against Oakland. He had 12 against Indy, outlier, I think, because he had 26 against Kansas City, 21 against Atlanta. Like, this guy's getting almost 20 carries a game. You give me 20 carries a game against a team that has, like you mentioned, a very vulnerable rush defense, and it's something you have to at least think about, especially when you're 4,000 something on draft, 4,600 on DK. You're pretty much in that low mid tier on every single site, and it's like, well, damn, now I'm kind of talking myself into playing this guy, but then I just remember it's Carlos Hyde, man. I don't know. I'm on the fence. I get it because the matchup is there, the touches are there, and if there's a lot of points, you love the goal line stuff the goal line work he'll get too. By the way, in that 160-yard London game, he fumbled at the 1. So I mean, it could have been a completely different story, even better for him. So I think. He's okay, but obviously there's so many good running backs on the board. I don't think I'm going there.
Don't forget, this past week, Joe Mixon rushed for over 100 yards. He did have over 30 carries though, so I guess we gotta
for those that are gonna go. By the way, we haven't gotten there, but for those that are gonna go Kalen Ballage this week, Carlos Hyde is the same thing, just better, I think. So I don't know.
Ballage, I kind of like him a little bit, but we'll get there.
Nobody likes that guy.
We'll get there. Marquis Brown, I hope plays because I really would like to kind of combine him and Jackson together. Houston Texans give up the most yards after catch, and so that big explosive play ability, I would love to see Marquis Brown get a couple of those big plays where I think he could expose that Texans secondary. So Marquis Brown, I hope that he's in there, and I like that. But outside of that, I'm pretty good on this game.
Yep, same.
Next, we go to Washington. Jets, Redskins. Redskins -1. My God, this is a game where it's too bad. It's like a remake of the Jets Giants game last week. However, the Redskins don't really have an offense. So, I got to go here and just say Jamison Crowder, my man's in a revenge narrative against the Redskins. But I mean, he's become a very intricate part of this offense with Sam Darnold back. It's like his security blanket. He's making very impressive routes out of the slot, and he's getting open, and Darnold's finding him. His last 2 games have been absolutely incredible. But looking at this game, is there any fantasy value? We see Dwayne Haskins is starting. I don't know if that hurts or helps McLaughlin, but I mean, this is a Jets defense that cannot defend the pass. Very good against the run, so I can just discredit any type of running situation that the Redskins have. But they do have some threats on the passing game, and I would love to see what your thoughts are on this.
No, thank you. I absolutely hate this game. McLaurin maybe, but not even. Like, he hasn't done any. Like, well, I get it. It's been really tough matchup. So here's the thing. I've heard this before, and it's, McLaurin was just that one-hit wonder. One good game against Miami, one good game against a terrible Philly secondary at the time. That's it. He hasn't done anything since. Well, he's played Buffalo, Minnesota, San Fran, all in a row. I mean, I don't know any receiver that has gone through those 3 games and been a complete stud against all of those. Just go ask Odell Beckham, right? Like it's really tough. So give me, some hidden, 1% on Terry McLaurin maybe, but yeah, this game's awful. I don't have any interest. The Jets are equally as bad. I never played Darnold. Le'Veon stopped trying in week 1. There's nothing from this team you even want. From either side. This is a brutal game. Not even a 40 total according to Vegas, and I agree with it. This is horrendous.
I think I said McLaughlin, not McLaurin. I knew I was going to mess up someone's name, but I do that once a show. But I like McLaurin on FanDuel for 5,500. I think you can go there. The Jets can't defend the pass, and they struggle against the slot. So you mentioned his last 3 games, tough matchups. I can't really count that 49ers game. That was in a hurricane. There was no ability to make passing plays with that torrential downpour. At Vikings, tough environment to go ahead and produce. Same thing with at Buffalo. Now you get a home matchup. I am a little concerned because I don't think Haskins has shown us any type of hope yet when he's been on the field. And so hopefully they've worked on some things in practice, but that's the only thing that's preventing me from wanting to rest McLaurin. But I think it's okay on FanDuel. I wouldn't mind it. If you're multi-entering, I can go there. But I think Crowder's in play. I don't think you can. I don't think you can go against that. What he's done the last couple games. He's getting the volume. He's getting into the end zone. So Darnold's going to continue to rely on him, and I don't see him not producing in this game. I feel like he's in a great spot here.
Yep, fair enough.
Any love for the defenses before we move on?
Jets, maybe, but that's it. Maybe just Jets defense.
All right, next game, totally different story. Falcons at Panthers. Falcons shocked the world, Manny. They crushed your soul last weekend.
Shocked the world? More like Drew Brees shocked my world. Like, what was that? If I told you out of all those games, there are going to be 2 quarterbacks that didn't throw a touchdown, the last person you'd guess would be Drew Brees to be in there, especially at home against Atlanta. That was pathetic, man. He got sacked 6 times. You don't even need to be a casual fan. You could be a totally newcomer to NFL to know that was a season high for both Atlanta and Drew Brees being sacked, even though he hasn't had much play time this year. But he had only gotten sacked once this season. Granted, it had been 3 games, but 1 sack. All of a sudden, there's 6 with no touchdowns against one of the worst defenses in the league. Hashtag football is what I call that. He's going to be much better this week. He's going to score, I can promise you. And the matchup's fine. This projects to be a shootout. A 50 total. I think 1 of 2 games with 50 totals, maybe 3 if you count that Atlanta Carolina game. I think I like this, man. I think I like this.
Well, let's talk about the players then. Who are your plays? Because there are some low-priced guys that seem to be getting some notoriety now and being talked about this week.
Russell Gage.
Well, I mean, yeah, I was going to go to him and also Brian Hill at the running back position. We saw an interesting kind of game flow for Atlanta because of how great their defense played. But, I mean, this guy filled in for Freeman. He got 20 attempts, 2 targets in the passing game. And, I mean, he scored a touchdown. He scored 14 DK points. So, if Freeman is out, and he's 4,800, and then you just mentioned the other guy as well, who Russell Gage, he's at 3,300 this week. And I mean, yeah, he got 5 targets, but for 23 yards. How optimal are these guys given their price points for GBP purposes?
I feel like this is a trap. I really do, only because I'm not. Brian Hill is not min salary. He's not 3.9 like he was last week, or 3.8 or 3K flat. He's almost 5K. Russell Gage is almost min salary. He's 3.3, but at least on DK. But do we really think these guys are going to be some sort of slate breakers to the point where if you don't have them, you're done, right? Like, I don't know. Like, anytime there's a number 3 receiver that is chalk on a slate, oh man, that's a disaster. That's always a disaster. Like, you're not even the 4th option maybe in this offense but your minimum salary and you're getting some playing time, so you're automatically chalk. For me, this screams bad chalk, but I don't know. Every time I've called bad chalk, I've been on the wrong end of this, man. So,
no,
geez,
it's bad chalk. Let's look at other
Sure.
wideouts that we can go to outside of Gage. We got Debo Samuel, 4K, which right now, currently for me, he's really rated pretty high in this matchup at home. Emmanuel Sanders, which I think Emmanuel Sanders is going to be out still. Is that correct?
As far as I know, yeah.
Okay. So he's at 4K. I think
It could be he didn't practice, but he's still questionable. So I'd say no, but
okay. Hunter Renfro, I think, is interesting at 4K at home against Cincinnati. What he's done over the last few weeks would give me confidence. The thing is with Gage, he's battling against Julio and Ridley. And
right.
Matt Ryan's going to go to them first, no matter what. So it's hard to kind of justify how much volume that he would get. 5 targets on 23 yards is just not going to do me any justice. I could see a lot of people plugging him in cash lineups though, but I don't think I would want to go there. I think Randall Cobb at 4,300, Auden Tate at 4,200. I think these guys have more upside. But when it comes to the running back, if you're looking for a cheap play, if this guy plays, does he get the volume again of 20 carries, or was that just totally contingent upon what we saw last week with the game flow of them just running the clock out in that second half?
That's my thing. They were up by so much. Again, Drew Brees didn't score, and they just ran the football. And I'm not sure they'd love to go into this game thinking, yeah, we're going to give Brian Hill 20 carries again. Like they were up by so much in that game that they didn't even need to pass. Yeah, I don't think I'm as high on Brian Hill as everyone else is. I almost have nothing of him. Think about it this way, and same thing with Russell Gage too. It's like if I'm saving going down to 3K guys, or in Hill's case 4-8 guys, and rostering him, even though they're not the same price, rostering him over the Dalvins, the Zekes, the Fournettes, the Josh Jacobs of the world, like those guys, whatever combination of those guys, it's going to have 25, 30 fantasy points, right? And you're going to slot 2 of them in. Someone is going to get value correct somewhere else, whether that's a receiver or tight end or whatever. And that's how they're going to save. If you're automatically saving at running back to pay up for an extra, I don't know, receiver, or to pay up at tight end or quarterback or whatever it is, like someone's going to have 25 to 30 points plus in both of those spots. Brian Hill could realistically give you like 10. 9, and you're so far behind even people who paid up at the position, because what if they saved that receiver and had, I don't know, some outlier game from Devontae Parker or something, right? And Devontae Parker went for 120 and 2 touchdowns, just hypothetically speaking. You're so far behind because you tried to save at running back. You know what I mean? And I don't know, it's one of those where saving at running back is really, really dangerous unless it's a full-fledged, smash spot of the world. Here we go, volume. They really have no one else back there type of thing, where it's just I don't see that in Brian Hill.
2 things bother me in this situation. One being last week I cut down on my exposure to Ronald Jones and upped it to Montgomery. And I don't want that to be the situation this week. And I don't want to go against the grain so much because Brian Hill is 33.6% currently on DraftKings. He's the highest projected owned player according to Osmos projections at this point in time.
Yep.
And Carolina has a horrible rushing defense.
Yep.
And so it's like the perfect formula. But also I'm thinking, man, they have such a better passing offense than they do a running game. And, yes, he did get in the end zone last week, but then I also have to think about kind of his overall production. And when I look at it, I'm like, okay, 20 carries, the volume's there, but 3 yards per attempt, that's something I don't like. It's very frustrating, man. And he got in the end zone through the passing game on a 10-yard reception, but it's something that I'm going to have to really figure out over these next 2 days is Brian Hill that guy that is a must need based on all these different metrics going into this weekend? And I mean, are you going to go with the chalk or are you going to go against it? And it's so difficult because there's a huge possibility they can just go pass heavy and completely abandon the running game.
Yeah, it's very true. So here's how this works, and this is how I'm looking at it. It's whenever you have chalk like this, and you have guys that are going to be astronomically owned to the point where they're a value play and they're the highest owned on the slate. Jalen Samuels type, right? You get games where you have to be, in my opinion, you still have to have the same checklist for everyone. Are they favorites at home? Are they 3 down backs? Jalen Samuel in that case was all of those, right? They played Indy and they ended up winning. He did it through catches, but whatever. He had 13 or 14 catches, whatever it was. But they were actually competitive in that game, and you thought they were going to win. In this game, and they were at home. In this game, it's Brian Hill on the road as a dog against Carolina, only because he's that price and there's no one else really back there. I don't know. It's not really the same, and you could make a strong case to fade this guy without, making dumb decisions.
From what I've been told from a lot of people in the DFS community is you don't take running backs as a dog on the road.
That's when I first got into DFS, that's what people would tell me. That's exactly what you got to look for. I'm like, all right, still to this day, I think I look for that.
And you mean to tell me that he's the highest owned? And
that's crazy.
And so, yeah, I mean, if this was a home game and maybe is like a 3.2 point dog, or it's like even money line, I don't know. This is going to be the biggest question that we have to answer. The other side of the ball, love DJ Moore. I think DJ Moore is impressive. I think Kyle Allen is really showcasing somewhat of a talent with this connection with him. Moore is just involved heavily, and the volume is there. He's not getting in the end zone, which is, imagine if he got in the end zone. My God, he would be putting up Michael Thomas numbers.
Yeah, he'd be putting up massive numbers. You're right.
But he's only 5,900. And this defense of the Atlanta Falcons, horrible against the pass. Michael Thomas still got there last week. So I'm not concerned about this. And this is going to be a home game for the Carolina Panthers. I like Moore, and I would love to just get your take real quick on Kyle Allen. I mean, he's 5,300, and he's facing one of the worst secondaries in all of the NFL.
Yeah, I actually like Kyle Allen quite a bit. I love the price tag. People love paying down at quarterback. There's your guy. You have 2 guys, which maybe even a third if you want to consider Olsen, but DJ Moore and Curtis Samuel are the clear number 1s and 2s, getting, if you're talking DJ Moore, 10 targets per game the last 4 games. You're talking Curtis Samuel. I mean, he saw 8, 6, and 11 in the last 3 games. Like, you're talking guys that pretty much see all of the passing down volume. And yeah, you love that. If you're not playing McCaffrey, which I think he's tough to get to at 10-5, even though he has a good projection, then play some of the passing game. If you do believe this is going to be a really high scoring game, then you have to have a piece of this game. I think Kyle Allen to DJ Moore and Curtis Samuel seems pretty good.
If you decide to roll with Kyle Allen, can you throw CMC in the mix in this game stack?
I think you can, but it's a bit tricky only because CMC for me, it's you want the correlation. For me, we haven't seen much passing down work at all. At least not like Cam used to feed McCaffrey, right? Cam used to give him 11 to 13 targets every single game. Cam just couldn't even throw downfield. Kyle Allen can. And we're seeing the production go down to the point where the last 4 games, McCaffrey does not even have 50 receiving yards in any of those. So careful there. But if you wanted to, I don't think it's a bad move.
All right, we just got a few more games left. Want to go ahead and just don't forget, guys, if you're looking to get involved with the number 1 player in the world, Awesemo, Alex Baker himself, and use all the tools and resources that everyone here at Awesemo.com uses, go to Awesemo.com/NFL, check out the landing page, check out all the different services and products and tools and resources that are available to you on a day-to-day basis. And you get 50% off your first month. So go there, check out the videos so you know what you're getting before you actually get involved. And the promo code is NFL Strategy. So Awesemo.com/NFL, promo code NFL Strategy. Next game, Manny. I don't really have much to say, so we can go ahead and make this quick. But Buffalo and your Miami Dolphins.
Skip another 40 total game. Here's the thing, because there's people with decent ownership in this one. Kalen Ballage, what's the love for this cat? I mean, he's done nothing. He is awful. He's terrible. He is not good. He hasn't scored 10 fantasy points the entire season. Not one game. Where's the love coming from? I'm not even sure. He saw 20 carries last game and almost had as many carries as he did yards. He had 43 yards. What is the love for this guy? I don't understand. 4 receptions, 2 yards. How is that possible? I have no idea. I don't know what the love is for this guy.
I think you got to consider him. Buffalo Bills, where you want to go if you're trying to attack them, is the running game. They struggle. They've given up. They're top 12, top 13 in yards given up. I think when it comes to touchdowns, in the top 10 of giving up the most touchdowns on the ground as well. I'm not saying Balaj is a great player, nor am I saying is he a fantastic play. But if he's going to get 20 carries and he's going to get 4 targets at that price point, you got to somewhat consider it. So if you have this player pool like we did last week of Singletary, Montgomery, Ronald Jones, all these guys that were very cheap that you plugged and put in different lineups and multi-entering, I think you got to have Balaj in that player pool.
Sure. I will have as close to 0 as I can.
I guarantee you have some Balaj shares come Sunday. Don't fight it. Don't fight it.
Because of his price. Yeah. But as the guy, look, it's another thing. We are dogs at home. Like, we're a very, very bad team. If we trail in this game, everyone has seen it. The guy literally has no hands. The guy cannot catch a football. His life depended on it. He's terrible in the passing game. He doesn't do anything after the catch. I think Laffy was the one that tweeted it, but he tweeted all the running back metrics and elusive metrics and how good a running back can be after the catch or after contact. Balaj is like last in everything. He's a terrible player. He's awful, but I guess the price tag is a thing. We're not even. I don't know. I don't even love the matchup either or the game script. I don't love anything about this guy.
I think it's a trap game for Buffalo. Okay. I really do.
If you think like that, then yeah.
Yeah. I mean, Miami went to Buffalo earlier in the year and surprised us. I mean, they were dominating that game. There were a turnover or two that was unfortunate enough to take away that W from them, but they were dominating. And Fitzpatrick almost threw 300 yards, threw for a touchdown. If you look at the running game, Walton 14 carries, 66 yards, Drake 6 for 21. So not necessarily the best, but they were moving the ball, and I think that matters. And I think at the home, you're coming off a win at Indianapolis, which is a great road win for them. Probably feeling themselves, probably a little confident. I wouldn't be surprised if that translated into this game, and we saw some offensive production out of these cheap guys. So I think you have to at least consider the cheap guys of Miami, Devontae Parker, Balaj. I think these guys can somewhat be in play. Not saying they're the best of plays, but I think cheap-wise, they definitely rank higher than some other guys that people are high on when it comes to ownership.
Fair enough.
Next game, New Orleans at Tampa. I know you're a little upset right now with Drew Brees. I'm not sure if you want to go back, but this is probably the best matchup for him when it comes to the passing game. So is Brees someone that you're going to forgive, and are you going to go back to the well here?
So Atlanta last week, 31st against the pass, according to DVOA. Tampa, 27. I guess Tampa's better, so he'll do worse this time. That was a terrible performance. Yeah, he's going to do much better. And I do like him. It's just Michael Thomas, 10K, well, 9.9. And if you wanted to pair him with Kamara is about 7.4. So I think 7.4 is better than 9.9. Yeah, easy math, right? It's still frustrating because he throws to so many different people, and really outside of Thomas, there's not that clear pairing. Like, Kamara isn't doing Kamara things right now. If you argue that he's injured, maybe he is. I don't know. If we get old Alvin Kamara, then yeah, I'd love to pair him with Kamara and just let it ride. But Michael Thomas has been so good. How do you get away from Michael Thomas? The only thing that doesn't have me on 100% of any of these guys is the price tag for Thomas is extremely prohibitive, right? So now you have to make the decision. Do you go 10K or 10.5 McCaffrey or 10K Michael Thomas? You can't fit them both.
With Balaj and Hill.
Oh goodness, you are drawing dead. And Russell Gage, yeah, terrible lineup.
Yo, I'm telling you, I guarantee you, we'll see a lot of duped lineups that have those players. 100%, no doubt about it.
So you'll have like 30 points, 2, 3, 1.
Yeah, but imagine if they go 30, 30, 15, 20. Like, my
I mean,
God.
yeah, that'll
Woo!
be great. But you're
Woo!
counting on Balaj and Russell Gage and guys like this to score that many points. Maybe Brian Hill. Like, I don't know, dude.
Look what
I
Ronald
want to
Jones
play
did.
these guys, but really tough. The price is just so prohibitive for me.
Yeah, I agree with you with Kamara. He's not doing Kamara things, so I can just go ahead and really toss that option out. I just can't pay that. I'd rather go elsewhere.
He had
Thomas
4
is,
carries last game.
yeah,
4.
24. Yeah, I mean, but he's not utilized as a running back when it comes to carries and establishing a running game. I mean, he
I mean,
is.
if you give him the normal 15 carries that he was getting early on in the season, I'd say, all right, let's go, Kamara. But
Yeah,
11 and 4 the last 2 games. Like, I think he's clearly still injured, but I don't know. People say no, so I don't know.
I think so too. I think they don't want to risk it, and they try to just utilize him the best way that they can. But I don't think it's an area we can go. I think when it comes to Thomas, this is going to be probably one of these toughest decisions because now that price point is getting to the point where we need him to do incredible things. 8,300 last week on DraftKings, more than it was a no-brainer. Now I mean, 9,900. We need him to not only produce that 31 points, but I mean, we need him to get in the end zone too.
Yeah, no,
It's going to be very
it's a lot
difficult.
to ask.
What about the Tampa side of the ball? A pass-heavy offense. I mean, there was a big disappointment last week with Godwin and Evans, who were in a dream matchup, and yet they were nowhere to be found. O.J. Howard was kind of revived against one of the worst tight end pass defenses in the league. So when it comes to this matchup, do you see shootout or do you see a Saints defense making adjustments from last week and really putting pressure on Winston and creating turnovers?
Yeah, I see. Well, they can create turnovers for sure, and I wouldn't be surprised if that happens. I would not be surprised if they fall behind even early. You know, the Saints are pretty decent favorites here, and if that's the case, we're gonna get some more Jameis Winston garbage time. And I love Jameis Winston garbage time. A lot of Mike Evans, a lot of Chris Godwin. I hate it that they both never really go off together. So that's frustrating whenever you want to stack Winston with any one of these guys. But I love Mike Evans. I'm about in a quarter of my lineups, and Godwin's right there behind him. So, yeah, I love this to shoot out. It's just, again, it's tough to play the game as much as I want to.
I spoke about the flow chart last week, which I think is really shedding light on how we, roster these two wide receivers. If you look at the matchups and the defenses that they've played, Godwin crushes the zone defense. In the slot, finds a lot of space over the middle. Gets open, and that's where he's performed at the highest level this season. He did it against the Rams before they got Ramsey, where they played a lot of zone. He did it against the Saints. Saints play a lot of zone as well, and now he's going to have that rematch again. I think Godwin has the upper hand here. Evans thrives in man-to-man coverage. Did it against the Seattle Seahawks. We saw that Tennessee, both heavy man-to-man defenses, and that's just kind of been the flow this year with those two. So I think if I had to rate both of them this week, last week I was more Evans than Godwin. Kind of worked out in a sense. I mean, he did get more yardage. Godwin did get a couple more receptions. But this week I think I'm flipping the role and I'm seeing Godwin ranked ahead of Evans.
Yeah, fair enough. I like that.
All right, we're going to go ahead and speed it up real quick. We got the 4 o'clock games. Let's go with the first one, Cincinnati, Oakland. The only thing I got to say is Josh Jacob, lock button. I'm done.
Yeah, I love Josh Jacobs, by far my favorite play in the game. And I'm not really on Waller at all. So I told you, I thought he was extremely overrated. He's had 2 really good games. Everything else has been pedestrian, really. And now we're kind of seeing, regular, normal games from him, not the 126 and 2 TD games. I think he's more of that 5 to 8 target guy. He'll catch 3 to 5 passes. He'll get 50, 60 yards. Maybe he gets in the end zone. Maybe he doesn't. I think at 5.5, that might be too much.
Damn, you're doing my boy dirty. Waller,
I mean, what has he done instead of just one game? He's okay. He's not a bad tight end, but he's not like top 3 tight end in the league. Oh, he's the next Kelsey or whatever. Like, chill. And by the way, he has a quarterback, which my opinion isn't really the best. A lot of people were talking Carr in YouTube chat. You're guaranteeing yourself no 300-yard bonus. But I mean, if you want to, I don't know. The guy hasn't thrown it yet.
Well, how about last week? You remember Carr was supposed to be one of the highest in cash games. You remember you were like, what? Is this for real? and against the I forget what game it was, but
Chargers.
yeah, against the Chargers, nowhere to be found.
I mean, I mean, to me, it was obvious, but people see something else in this guy that I clearly don't see. I don't know.
All right. I'm good with that. Let's go Arizona, San Fran. Kittle most likely won't be playing. He's doubtful. 49ers, they're in a great matchup this week at home against the Cardinals. We saw what happened last time in Arizona, but Arizona, they brought some production there. Kenyon Drake was fantastic against them. Murray was able to move in the pocket, and Kirk had somewhat of a real decent game against them. And Kirk coming off a huge game now, breakout with 3 touchdowns and 138 yards. After all the crap that we've talked about this passing offense this year, they started actually throwing it in the air, man. My God, are you shocked?
Dude, I mean, we've been saying it since week 1. Just throw the ball downfield. You'll be a much better quarterback. Look what happens when you throw downfield. You have a 300-yard game. You throw 3 touchdowns. You're fantasy relevant. I mean, you keep doing that, I'll roster you every single week, man. But you stick with those 5-yard passes and you're boring. You suck. The team sucks. You lose. You still lost, but much better, right? Much, much better. So I think he's in play. I think the receivers are in play, not top plays, because I just think there's better options on the board. Christian Kirk, fantastic game. Now he's up to 5.7, almost 6K. And if I can guarantee even half of what we saw last week, then sure, I'll get a touchdown for 70 yards and 5 catch or 3 or 4 catches. I'll take that. But I don't know if that's what I'm getting. And he's not much higher, but he's creeping up in price now to the point you have to think about it. It's not a plug and play.
Yeah, I mean, 26 targets the last 3 games. He did struggle a little bit against the 49ers, but against the Saints, he thrived. Buccaneers, I mean, there's really just no discrediting what he did. He's on the field the majority of the snaps, playing about 92% of the snap shares. So can we justify that at 5,700?
I think it's all right. If I knew they were just going to keep throwing downfield, yes. I don't know that. So I'm not sure. I have him as a middle of the road play. I have guys that are better than him, that I like better than him.
Okay. We actually have to wrap up because we went past the time, Manny, so we're not going to be able to get that last game in. However, though, you can go ahead and catch Jordan Frank. I think they're going to be doing the NFL betting show, if I'm not mistaken, right now. So go ahead and check that out, guys, if you're looking to go ahead and bet on the games this weekend. Manny, where can we go ahead and find you at?
At MLaura on Twitter. Most of my work you guys use here on Osmo. It's on fantasycruncher.com. If you want to catch my live streams, it's twitch.tv/MLaura.
All right, guys. And you guys can go find me at Chris Randone on Twitter as well. Once again, we appreciate you guys. Thank you for joining us for the NFL DFS strategy. So week 11, presented by Osmo.com and Yahoo Daily Fantasy Sports. You guys have a great weekend and take care.